let's move on. So another big fight from hashtag UFC Atlantic City was seeing Chris Weidman compete again. The former champ got locked up in the cage with Bruno Silva and finished. Decision the Brazilian. The fight came to a halt in round 3 via eye pokes. Strikes. Yes, this fight was marred by controversy. Yes, I'm a jackass for laughing along at this whole deal. But man, there's so many ways that this could have ended more properly, I think, for the way we stomach endings to a fight, right? You throw the fouls aside, this fight was pretty entertaining. Did the commission get it right after huddling it up? Because there was an end to the fight, Nolan, right? But the result still doesn't sit right with a lot of us.
Yeah, and it looks like we also
have... And I want to welcome Big John McCarthy to the panel. Just saw him pop in here right now. Big John, your ears must have been ringing because we're just tackling the Chris Weidman topic. I'll let Nolan chime in, and then maybe you can weigh in as well. Did you get that? Weighing in? Got it. Okay.
Here's the thing, right? I think with the TKO seemed very wrong to me. Having a fighter get clearly poked in the eye twice, go down, not be given any sort of benefit of the doubt, not be given any sort of timeout, and then just say, hey, man, sorry, you just got finished with punches. That obviously would have been the wrong outcome. Now, the decision seems to me to be a little bit more correct. I know a lot of people online were kind of complaining as well. I think the bottom line is here that there was a foul that was missed. There's an error. There's already some sort of mistake that was made. So we've got to figure out, how do we correct this? How do we proceed forward? For them to go to the scorecards, Chris Weidman was already winning. He won the first round, he won the second round, and was winning the third round in the judges' eyes. So he had the scorecards in his favor. So in that regard, I think that was one of the more fair outcomes that they could come up with, would be to go to the scorecards. The other options would be to have it be a no contest, would be to deduct points from Chris Weidman, a point or two, which if it was 1 point, it wouldn't have an impact. If it was 2, it would make it a draw. And then the other option would be disqualification. So I don't think that there's any sort of perfect scenario when a foul is missed. And obviously I'll let John kind of weigh in on maybe some of why these other routes weren't taken. But we saw, I don't know if people remember, in way back when Ovince St. Preux and Jean Vellante fought in Newark, New Jersey. It was right when Strikeforce was merged over. And a similar thing happened. I think it was 30 seconds into the round. I think somebody got poked. I think it was Vellante got poked, and they had to score that 30 seconds as a whole round, and people were talking about it then. So it's not something, technical decisions aren't something we haven't seen before. But I do think largely the protocol would be right, unless they decided that there should be a disqualification or that there should be points taken. And I'll let John maybe talk about that moment where they're trying to decide which avenue to go down, how it works out.
I want to welcome the host of Weighing In, John McCarthy, of course, a big figure in our sports. Him and Josh Thompson have a great podcast. Check it out, Weighing In. John, thanks for popping in last minute. We really value your expertise here. That just didn't sit right with a lot of fans, media, other fighters. 2 egregious eye pokes, man. In one combo, contributed heavily to the ending of that fight. There was also prior eye pokes from both parties on both sides, and it looked like Copeland had given them enough of a warning to say, hey, this could impact my decision making going forward, meaning points are going to start coming off, guys, at some point, because this is just getting out of hand. Now, that said, I also saw Chris Weidman, I don't know if you call it parrying or gauging his distance, but the fingers kept sticking out, and Copeland failed to address that, in my opinion, at that moment. But take it from here, what did you see play out here in Atlantic City?
Well, when you're taking a look at what happened as far as, the stopping of the fight, I don't think Gary Copeland saw those eye pokes at that moment, that the fight really came to an end. He didn't see what occurred. He saw that later in an instant replay and was advised of it, and then made a decision. And this whole thing comes down to the decision making that the referee had in the fight, because when he first made the decision to stop the fight based upon Bruno Silva not being able to intelligently defend himself, he stops the fight and he awards it as a TKO victory to Chris Weidman. But it was fouls that actually hurt Bruno Silva. He was put into a position where he couldn't see. He got poked in both eyes, and he was dropping down based upon the eye pokes, not because he was hurt by a punch or anything that was a legal blow. So right away, you can look and you say you can't have a TKO victory, just like Nolan was saying. That doesn't sit well. It's wrong because you're having a fight awarded to a fighter TKO based upon an unfair practice, a foul. So it really comes down to the New Jersey State Athletic Commission. They see on the instant replay, hey, he got poked in the eye. Gary, how are you calling that eye poke? And really what it comes down to is when Gary Copeland says it was unintentional, is what I'm going to say. Now, since it's in the third round, there is no contest. You've entered the third round of the fight. Under the rules, the first two rounds have been scored. We're going to have the judges score what took place in the third round. They will give it that score. They all gave it a 10-9 to Chris Weidman. And Chris Weidman was, given a technical decision victory over Bruno Silva. The only way it could have changed out is if Gary Copeland had decided, look, I've told him multiple times, to close his hand. He kept doing it. And I'm not saying he wanted to, poke him in the eye, but it was intentional that he's putting his fingers out in that fashion continuously. I'm going to say it's intentional. And with it being intentional and with it being a foul that obviously had damage because it ended up stopping the fight, I automatically, under the rules, I've got to take 2 points. I can't take just one. I would have to take 2 points from Chris Weidman. So in the third round, if he had done that way, it puts it in the position of Bruno Silva cannot lose the fight. Chris Weidman cannot win the fight. Under the unified rules, Bruno Silva, based upon that being a foul that was intentional and did damage, in that situation, the only thing that he can do is, at best, get a win. At worst, get a draw. Same thing with Chris Weidman. The best that he can do is a draw. The worst that he can do is he could lose, but he cannot win the fight. So even if Chris Weidman, they took 2 points from him, the final score would have ended up somewhere 28-27 on the scorecards, Chris Weidman being the winner. But based upon the rules, he cannot win that fight. The best he can get is a draw, and the fight would have come out as a draw between Chris Weidman and Silva.
Big John, could he have just disqualified him?
Yeah, absolutely. He could have disqualified him. That's a choice that, he had the ability to make, but he didn't feel that. Obviously, by just saying that it was unintentional, he really didn't feel that Chris Weidman in any way meant to do that. And so, the DQ probably wasn't even a question in his mind, but yeah, he could have.
John, I have an issue with these rules.
Go ahead, Danny.
I have a lot of issues. All right, but look, listen. One of them is the dude still got poked in the eyes 4 times.
You're right,
and he lost. And I understand that the referee didn't see this as intentional, right? But in soccer, for example, even if you don't do anything intentional, even if it's still just a dangerous play, a dangerous foul, you were trying to go for the ball, but you still did something reckless, irresponsible, you can still get a yellow or even a red card. You can get kicked out of the game and get disqualified.
Sure.
Now, you really have to be a big POS in order to be out there intentionally trying to poke people's eyes. So I don't think we're going to see that very often. But was it irresponsible from Chris Weidman? 100%. He was still fighting with his hand open, and he had poked the guy 3 times prior, and we've seen it. They warned them about the rules in the locker room, and then we see them in the fight, and they just keep getting warnings, and it doesn't lead to anything. And that to me is very frustrating to watch. I guess my point is, should there be a change in the rules or adjusted that the definition is not if it was intentional or not, because I don't think Chris Weidman is the type of guy to want to be eye poking somebody. But more like, was it responsible or not? Was it, because he had been warned prior. And to me, I just can't stomach the fact that a guy got eye poked 4 times and he still lost a decision.
I totally understand what you're saying. here's where it comes to. You bring up soccer, and yellow card, red card, great. Doesn't matter if it's soccer or if it's in fighting or anything like that. The biggest problem you have is with referees in MMA. The point deduction is a huge thing to do. And it's funny because Gary Copeland had taken a point in an earlier fight where you look, and it was a groin shot, and that was against Herbert Burns. And you look and you go, man, you took that even when the fighter who was fouled really wasn't damaged by it. And you gotta play those things out, and you got to say, how damaged was the person? Do I have to try to level this out by taking a point? Because a point deduction is a big thing in MMA, especially with only a 3-round fight. And you're talking, in soccer, they get a free kick. Okay, so what? It's easier to make those calls based upon things. We have people all the time saying, Joe Rogan says, hey, if a guy gets poked in the eye, automatic point deduction. Everyone would lose their minds if that's what happened, because it would alter fights so in a glaring fashion, because they say it about groin shots and they say it about eye pokes. You're going to have people winning fights that don't deserve to win fights based upon, oh, you said it's an automatic point deduction, so we're taking the points. There has to be some semblance of common sense when you're taking points and what you're doing in the fight. And in this situation, when you have someone that is continuously putting their fingers out, look, that rule was put into place because of John Jones. John Jones used to big brother everyone, putting his hand out there, and it was like, hey, we got to get away from someone being able to just put a pitchfork out in front of someone's face and have them try to dodge their head going by it. I mean, in some ways it's good because it's telling the fighter, get your head off the center line, but it's not fair. So that's why it's there. The biggest problem is the referees are not using it accordingly. They're allowing it to go on and on and on. And in this situation, you got to go by rules, and you got to have rules. Okay. And sometimes rules don't really work for the situation you have, but you have to have them. You have to follow them. It was there for them to have basically a no contest, but it would have been called a draw. A technical draw is what it would have been called. I think everyone would have been more satisfied with that outcome than they are with Chris Weidman getting the win and then basically saying stuff at the end that I don't think he was thinking about what he was saying, but it wasn't really good because that didn't help his situation.
John, let's rewind. How would you have handled it going back to when Copeland gives the warning, but Weidman's still putting the fingers out there? At what point do you stop it? And do you address him again with either a point deduction or a stern warning, or how do you interject yourself?
Yeah, you got to come to a point where you stop, and whether you're going to take points or whether you're going to give a hard warning, you're going to tell Chris Weidman, I'm telling you right now, you continuously are putting your hand out there. I want your hand closed. If your hand comes out past your shoulder blades going forward, I want your hand to be closed. Do you understand me? When he's going to say yes, and he's not going to be happy, and that's just life. That's the way things are. But you've put it out not only for him, you've put it out for the commission. They hear you. You put it out for the crowd there, and you put it out for the TV audience. Now, the one thing you got to do is once you say that, then you got to be a man of your word. He does it again, stop and start taking points. Look, he can close his hand. He knows. He's just more comfortable pairing with an open hand. And we allow them to do that, but we don't allow them to do it center line of the face. It's got to be outside of the center line of the face, and that wasn't happening.
So by doing that, now we fast forward to the end of the fight. We see that the finger pokes did have something to do with it. Then it presents the case of Chris was only eligible for the draw, but Bruno was eligible for the win. We go to the scorecards. The math works out in favor of Weidman, but the rules say he only gets the draw, and that's how we arrive at the technical draw.
That's how you would arrive at the technical draw.
And John, I have a question. We've seen it with a few fights recently. Do you think there'll ever become a time where a restart could occur? Like if a foul's missed? We saw it recently, like I think maybe 6 months ago, there was a fight at the Apex where I think it was at the Apex, or maybe it was at Noche UFC. It was somewhere in Vegas.
The Lacerda one.
Yeah, and there was Chris Taioni thought that a fighter was out, but he wasn't. And so then they went to the replay and they said he wasn't out. would there be any reason why they couldn't just restart the fight from where they were?
Yeah, your problem with the restarting of the fight in that type of situation, and you're going to get this, and I've had situations similar to it. You're going to get one of the fighters or both of the fighters where they have now been told it's over, and the adrenaline and everything, and the nerves and the heart rate starts to go down and starts to drop off, and now all of a sudden they're told, "Oh, you're going to fight again," and one of them is going to say, "Hey, man, you took it all out of me, man. I had no fire." Go back to Yoel Romero and Tim Kennedy. Tim Kennedy to this day complains about that whole thing when, look, it wasn't Yoel's corner that did it. It was a UFC cut man that I cannot take points from a fighter based upon a cut man. But Tim said, look, man, it took all the gas out of me. I thought I'd won the fight, and I just didn't have anything. And you could look at him and say, I understand that. I can absolutely say that you're telling the truth, and you're being honest about that. And there's no way to be totally fair to both guys in that. So I don't think there's going to be that point where you get to we're going to restart it, because someone's going to end up in that position where they go, I was not able to get going again. You took that from me.
I have one final question for Big John. How crazy do your mentions get on Twitter and Instagram after these type of things?
Oh my God. I just get blasted.
And do you enjoy it?
Sometimes yes and sometimes no, because it's one of those ones that's like, I don't want to put anyone in a bad spot. I don't want to sit there and say, I believe this person was right. I believe this person was wrong. It's not an easy thing to do. I know them all. And it's sometimes, I'll give a quick little answer trying to, but as soon as I give one little answer, then it just starts to blow up and everyone's asking me more. And it's like, I blew it. I should have just kept my mouth shut. But,
John,
I get to do it on things like this. So this is easier.
Just because we have you here, I did try and go on your social media to see if you had addressed it. And I saw you address something else. Someone just brought knees to a grounded opponent to you. And it says you're working on that. And maybe by the end of the year, we might have something there. How likely is that?
Look, Andy Foster has, Andy Foster and I got together after the one incident, and we came up with verbiage that we thought would really work for changing it. And, back in 2016, I came out with trying to say, okay, you look at, if you want to be a grounded fighter, you're going to have to put both hands down, to say that you're grounded in that position. Meaning it used to be anything more than the soles of your feet says that you're, a part of your body, touching the ground means you're a grounded fighter. So, fighters were smart. They started putting one finger down at a time. And so we tried to use the two hands. Now, the whole purpose for the two hands was we didn't want people putting two hands. In fact, we were in the back, we're instructing them saying, look, we're telling you, don't do this. Don't put two hands. In fact, you putting both hands is telling me that you're a little bit screwed up. I might stop your fight. I want you to drop to a knee and bring both of your hands up to protect your face or grab a hold of your opponent. That's what the rule was meant to do. But, politics and everything kind of got screwed up. So we've come up with a way of saying, all right, you want to be a grounded fighter? We're going to do it differently. And Andy's done a great job of going through and contacting all of the commission members from the different commissions, the tribal commissions. And it looks like right now that, everyone's on board with changing that. The problem with changing it is it's got to be voted on. The ABC convention is coming up to be voted upon. And then it's going to take a little bit of time for them to bring it into effect so fighters can get used to what the new rule is. So, but it is being worked on, and hopefully it's going to take effect.
John, thanks for stopping by Spinning Back Clique at the last minute, and dare I say it, weighing in on this topic here. We really appreciate it. Folks, catch John and Josh Thompson on their a great podcast. You can catch it on YouTube or podcast form. It's called Weighing In. Thanks, John. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys. You take care.
All right, you too, sir.